Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a topic that's, well, it seems like everybody's talking about it. Migrating those virtual machines, from ESXi over to Proxmox.
Right.
And actually, you know what? You guys sent us this fantastic guide on this whole process,
Yeah.
and we're gonna break it down
Yeah.
so you can tackle this whole migration thing. Feeling like you actually kind of know what's what.
Yeah. It's a big step to migrate your whole virtual infrastructure.
Right.
And it's good
Yeah.
to have some kind of, map or guide
Exactly.
to help you do it strategically.
And speaking of strategy, I love how this guide, it doesn't like throw you right into the deep end,
Right.
It starts out, and this is smart, by talking about the why. Like, why are so many people even doing this whole ESXi to Proxmox thing?
Yeah.
And, let's be real, that licensing fee.
Oh, yeah.
With ESXi, it's no joke. So,
Yeah.
open source, something like Proxmox,
Yeah.
that can be a game changer. Budget-wise, I mean.
It really can be. I mean, cost is, yeah, it's often the deciding factor for people,
Right.
But what I think is interesting about this guide is it goes a little deeper than that. It doesn't just say, oh, it's cheaper. It talks about how that open source approach, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Right.
And you can customize things, so you're not just, going with some platform that you're stuck with. You can really make it your own.
It's kind of like, I don't know, you're trading in that suit that's supposed to fit everybody
Right.
for one that's actually, made for you.
Exactly.
But,
Hmm.
got to keep it real.
Yeah.
The guide doesn't just sugarcoat things.
Right.
It talks about the bumps in the road,
Yeah.
what could trip you up during a migration,
Yeah.
downtime, maybe your virtual machines, they don't play nice,
Right.
storage issues.
It's good to think about those things.
It really is, because you don't want to be caught off guard.
No. Like, one thing it mentions is, how compatible your VMs are going to be.
Oh, good point.
Proxmox, it uses QEMUK VM. It's a different hypervisor, and if you're coming from ESX, you might have to adjust some things.
You really do. And I think it's so easy to get excited about the new platform that you forget to do those checks.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
listeners, just, keep that in mind.
Yeah. So once you've thought about those things, the compatibility,
Right.
then the guide, it jumps into like the actual migration strategies.
Okay.
And this is cool. It doesn't just give you one way to do it. It gives you 5 different approaches.
5.
Yeah.
So you've got options.
You got options. Yeah.
Good.
Each one has, its own pluses and minuses.
Oh, I like that. It's like choose your own adventure for migrations.
Exactly.
All right. So let's start with the first one.
Okay.
Piecemeal migration. This sounds kind of gentle, actually.
It is. It's like dipping your toes in the pool
Okay.
instead of doing a cannonball.
Right.
So it's low risk. You're testing the waters. Right. You migrate some VMs that aren't, mission critical.
No.
Just to see how it goes, work out any kinks.
Right.
And then once you're comfortable, then you can move those really important systems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Start small, build up that confidence, and then go for the big leagues.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Strategy number 2, OVF export import. What's the deal with this one?
So OVF, it stands for Open Virtualization Format.
Okay.
It's basically like a universal language that virtual machines can understand.
Oh, okay.
So this strategy, you're using that common language to package up your VMs from ESXi, and then you import them into Proxmox.
So it's like you're translating your VMs.
Exactly, yeah, into something that Proxmox can understand.
Got it. Okay, so what are some things to watch out for with this approach?
One thing is, even though OVF, it makes that transfer process easier,
Mhm.
you still need some downtime
Right.
because you have to shut down the VM on ESXi before you can export it.
Okay.
And then after you import it, really important to double check those network settings. Make sure that everything can communicate properly in the new environment.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Okay.
So plan for a little downtime, and then, double check those network settings. Solid advice. Okay, we are making some progress here. What's next on our migration strategy list?
All right, well, if downtime is something you really, really want to avoid,
Okay.
the guide talks about live migration with backup tools.
Okay, now that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so there are tools like Veeam Backup and Replication or StarWind V2V Converter,
Right.
and they can basically make a live copy of your VMs while they're still running,
Ooh.
and then migrate that copy over to Proxmox.
So there's minimal disruption.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It is pretty cool.
So you've got these like high-tech tools doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
Yeah.
While you can, just keep working. It's almost like having, I don't know, a moving crew for your virtual stuff.
Right.
But Are there things, like specific things you got to keep in mind when you're using these live migration tools?
Definitely. I mean, they're super convenient, but you got to know what they can and can't do.
Right.
For example, some of them might need a certain amount of bandwidth.
Okay.
Or you might have to give them temporary access to your storage network, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
The guide actually goes into all those details, which is great.
Yeah.
So you can pick the right tool that fits, your setup.
Right, because even if a tool seems like it's, top of the line, it's only going to work if you've got the right environment set up.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared.
Being prepared. I like it. Okay, speaking of preparation,
Yeah.
the guide talks about this strategy for dealing with, well, storage issues.
Right?
Because, that can be a real pain when you're migrating.
Oh, for sure.
It suggests using something called NFS storage as a bridge.
Yes.
Can you break that down for us? Like, what is that all about?
Okay, so NFS stands for Network File System.
Okay.
And it's basically, think of it like a universal language that lets computers share files over a network.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're temporarily setting up both ESS and Proxmox to access this shared NFS storage.
Okay.
So they have this common ground, right?
Right.
Where they can transfer the VM data without worrying about if they're compatible or not.
So it's like creating a neutral zone.
Exactly.
Where they can speak the same language.
Yes, a temporary neutral zone. I like that.
I don't like that. I thought it was pretty clever. Okay, that makes sense. So that's super helpful, especially if you've got like different storage formats on each side.
Right, or different protocols.
Okay, so we've got, let's see, piecemeal migration, OVF, export-import, live migration with the backup tools, and this NFS storage bridge.
Yep.
So that's 4. What's the last one? What's the 5th strategy that the guide talks about?
Okay, so the 5th one, this is for when downtime is like absolutely not an option.
Okay, yeah.
Like not even a little bit.
Got it.
And this one involves using temporary hardware.
Okay, temporary hardware.
Yeah, for the migration. Okay.
So you're basically setting up a whole separate system.
Right.
With its own hardware to run Proxmox at the same time that your ESXi is still running.
Okay.
So you're migrating your VMs over to this temporary Proxmox setup.
Okay.
And you're basically creating like a mirror image of your virtual infrastructure, but on Proxmox.
Got it.
And then once you've checked everything, you've got it all working smoothly on Proxmox. Then you can switch over your network connections.
Okay.
And it's like seamless from the user's perspective.
Wow. So it's like, in the theater when they have an understudy.
Right.
And they have to seamlessly step in.
Exactly.
While the main actor takes a bow. That's kind of what this is like.
Yeah, exactly.
The ultimate safety net.
It is. Of course, you've got to pay for that extra hardware. So
Right.
It's an investment.
Yeah.
But, for some organizations, that peace of mind, that's worth it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a lot with these migration strategies, 5 different ways to get it done.
Yeah.
But I do like that the guide doesn't just leave us hanging there.
Right.
It also talks about these best practices.
Yeah.
That can apply no matter, which strategy you choose.
Exactly.
And they're not just, technical tips. They're more like words of wisdom from somebody who's seen it all,
It's true. Yeah, it's like they've been there. They know what they're talking about.
Exactly. So let's dive into some of these golden nuggets, these best practices. What's the first thing on the list?
It really is.
Yeah.
Like always better to be safe than sorry, right? Especially when you're talking about your whole virtual world.
Exactly. It's not the time to take shortcuts.
No.
And speaking of not taking shortcuts,
yeah,
the very first best practice that the guide emphasizes, you probably already guessed it.
Let me guess. Backups.
Backups. Always backups.
Gotta have that safety net.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if something goes wrong during the migration, you got to be able to go back, right?
Right.
To a point where everything was working.
Exactly.
So before you even think about moving anything, make sure you've got solid, up-to-date backups of everything. And not just the backups themselves, but you got to test that you can actually restore from them.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's one thing to have the backups,
right?
But you need to know that they actually work.
Exactly. They got to be ready to go. All right. So we've got our backups. They're tested. We feel good about that. What's next?
Okay. So next up, create a test environment.
Okay.
Like, try to mirror your actual production setup as closely as you can.
So it's like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't want to be trying things out on your live systems.
Right.
So this way, you can try out the migration strategy you've chosen,
Right?
see if there are any bottlenecks, any weird compatibility issues.
All right, work out those kinks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And refine your process,
Yeah.
all without putting your real systems at risk.
Okay, love it. So test, test, test until you feel really good about it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Okay, now, let's say we've done all that. We've migrated our VMs over to Proxmox. We're feeling good. What happens then?
Monitoring.
Oh.
Yeah, the migration might be done, but you're not off the hook yet.
Right, right.
Proxmox, it might handle things a little differently than ESXi did.
Right, right.
So you really want to keep an eye on those VMs. Make sure they're playing nicely in their new home.
Yeah, so it's like after you get your car tuned up, you don't want to just, hit the gas and hope for the best.
Yeah.
You want to keep an eye on those gauges, make sure everything is running smoothly.
Exactly. You're looking for anything that seems off.
Yeah.
Like performance issues.
Yeah.
Or maybe some error messages that you weren't expecting.
Right, right.
Catching those things early can make all the difference.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we've got backups, test environment, monitoring. Anything else we should be thinking about for a smooth transition?
Documentation.
Oh, documentation.
That guide stresses this so much.
Yeah.
Write everything down. From the very beginning, like when you were first deciding between ESX and Proxmox, to every little setting you changed during the migration.
It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. Right.
Exactly. So if you ever have to troubleshoot something,
Yeah.
or even if you just need to remember what you did.
Right, a couple of months down the line.
Exactly. Having that documentation is going to save you so much headache.
It's true, because nobody wants to be digging through like old emails or trying to remember what they did 6 months ago.
Well, anybody has time for that.
No, exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from those specific migration strategies to these overall best practices for a smooth, hopefully painless transition.
And I think what I like about this guide is that it really emphasizes taking a strategic, thoughtful approach to the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. But before we wrap up, we have to talk about that last question the guide asks. The one about opportunities. Like, what unexpected opportunities might pop up once you've actually made that switch over to Proxmox? It's kind of a cool question.
It is, right. It makes you realize that this isn't just about moving some VMs from point A to point B.
Right.
It's about, like, opening up new possibilities.
Exactly. So Proxmox, it's open source, it's flexible.
Right.
What kind of doors does that open?
Well, for example, have you ever thought about containers?
Containers.
Yeah.
Like that whole world.
It feels a little intimidating. Like, I hear people talking about containers,
Yeah.
but it feels like a whole other language.
It can, but honestly, Proxmox makes it so much easier to get into.
Okay.
It works really well with something called LXC containers,
Okay.
which are super lightweight, super efficient, especially for certain types of applications. So you might have these workloads that on ESXi, they felt kind of clunky,
Right.
resource heavy.
Okay.
But then you put them in a container on Proxmox, and suddenly they're like lean, mean fighting machines.
I like that. Okay, so it's not just about moving the stuff we already have. It's about new ways of doing things.
Are there other things, other doors that this might open?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The level of customization you get with Proxmox is amazing.
Right.
You're not stuck with a prepackaged solution.
Right.
You can tweak it. You can really integrate it with what you already have. You can even get involved in the Proxmox community, develop your own add-ons, things like that.
Wow. So you can go from like someone who uses the platform
Right.
to someone who's actually contributing to it.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
There's a whole different level.
It is.
And the cool thing is, the more you learn about Proxmox, you're going to discover these little things, these features or tools that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of open source.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been really eye-opening. It's like migrating from ESXi's to Proxmox. It's not just a tech upgrade. It's this whole strategic shift.
Exactly. And it's about being open to new things, being willing to learn and experiment.
I love that. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive here into the world of ESE to Proxmox migration.
It's been fun.
It has. But, this is really just the beginning. So to all our listeners out there, go explore, experiment, and you know what? Have fun doing it.
Absolutely. Have fun.
This is the Deep Dive, signing off till next time. Keep sending us those great questions, and we'll keep on diving into all this cool tech stuff.